Olivia Hartley and Zoe Blackwell appear to embody the absolute pinnacle of suburban perfection. Their beautifully restored 1920s colonial home was the undisputed envy of the entire neighborhood, boasting a magnificent wraparound porch and flawlessly manicured gardens. To anyone looking from the outside, the couple seemed to possess absolutely everything one could desire in life. They enjoyed highly successful careers, lived in a gorgeous house, and shared a deeply loving partnership. Olivia had successfully established herself as one of the premier real estate agents in Millbrook. Blessed with a highly polished appearance and a natural talent for engaging in small talk, she had a unique gift for making clients feel completely at ease. By the age of 38, she had accumulated an impressive portfolio of multi-million-dollar property listings. Her immense ambition was equaled only by her intense work ethic, frequently dedicating 60 hours a week to her job just to secure massive deals. Zoe Blackwell, on the other hand, vastly preferred a much quieter existence. The 36-year-old worked as a freelance graphic designer out of a bright home office, spending her days crafting beautiful logos and engaging marketing materials for small businesses. With her distinct artistic flair and naturally easygoing disposition, she offered a calming counterbalance to Olivia's highly driven, Type A personality. While Olivia actively sought out the spotlight, Zoe felt entirely content working quietly behind scenes. The paths of these two distinct women initially crossed at a charming local coffee shop during spring of 2018. Olivia was in a rush, grabbing her customary triple shot latte, when she literally collided with Zoe, spilling hot coffee all over Zoe's pristine white blouse. Utterly mortified, Zoe insisted on covering the dry cleaning bill. What started as a completely random chance encounter slowly blossomed into a genuine friendship, and eventually, a passionate romance. For Olivia, this relationship provided a deep sense of stability after years of unfulfilling casual flings. She had accepted long ago that her incredibly demanding career left very little room for a meaningful personal life. However, in Zoe, she discovered a partner who truly understood the pressures of self-employment and deeply valued personal independence. Meanwhile, Zoe found herself irresistibly drawn to Olivia's overwhelming confidence and undeniable zest for life. Having recently walked away from a long-term relationship the previous year, Zoe had essentially resigned herself to focusing exclusively on advancing her career. But Olivia's intensely passionate nature successfully reignited a bright spark that Zoe believed she had lost forever. As their emotional bond deepened, the two women happily discovered a multitude of shared interests, including traveling the world, tasting fine wine, and undertaking home renovation projects. They spent countless weekends exploring picturesque New England towns or enthusiastically tackling do-it-yourself improvement projects. They constantly challenged one another to step outside of their respective comfort zones. Olivia successfully persuaded Zoe to experience the thrill of skydiving, while Zoe gently introduced Olivia to the calming practice of meditation. Friends and family frequently remarked on how beautifully the relationship managed to bring out the absolute best qualities in both women. After 2 wonderful years of dating, Olivia finally proposed during an incredibly romantic sunset hot air balloon ride. Zoe, completely overcome with deep emotion, eagerly said yes before Olivia could even finish articulating the big question. They immediately began planning a beautifully intimate fall wedding, thoroughly eager to officially begin the next exciting chapter of their lives together. As they happily settled into their domestic routine, neither woman could have possibly predicted the incredibly turbulent waters waiting for them just over the horizon. The seemingly solid foundation they had so carefully built together would very soon be tested in ways they could have never imagined. Olivia and Zoe happily exchanged their vows on a wonderfully crisp October afternoon in the year 2020. This intimate wedding ceremony was held directly in the beautiful backyard of their newly purchased dream home and was attended exclusively by their closest friends and family members. Magical fairy lights twinkled brightly up in the trees as the two brides, looking absolutely resplendent in perfectly tailored white pantsuits, passionately pledged their eternal love and unwavering commitment. The wedding reception that immediately followed was a truly joyous affair, featuring all of their guests dancing happily under the bright stars until long into the night. It genuinely seemed like the absolute perfect start to their brand new life together. The initial year of their marriage was an absolute whirlwind of domestic bliss and profound happiness. They spent their weekends casually exploring the local farmers' markets, enthusiastically hosting elegant dinner parties, and happily tackling various home improvement projects. They quickly fell into a very easy rhythm, with Olivia expertly handling all the household finances, while Zoe effectively took charge of the daily household management. However, right as their second anniversary began to approach, subtle but noticeable cracks started to form in their seemingly picture-perfect facade. Olivia's professional workload increased dramatically as the local real estate market experienced a massive boom. She found herself spending significantly more time at the office and frequently bringing heavy piles of work home over the weekends. Zoe, while trying her best to remain completely supportive, slowly began to feel deeply neglected. Their sex life, which was once incredibly vibrant, had sadly dwindled down to perfunctory, scheduled encounters that only happened every few weeks. Zoe constantly found herself desperately craving the intense passion and exciting spontaneity that had defined their early relationship. She actively tried to successfully rekindle that lost spark by planning romantic gestures, but Olivia perpetually seemed completely distracted and entirely unappreciative of these efforts. For her part, Olivia deeply felt the immense, crushing weight of being the primary breadwinner for their household. She had always taken pride in providing a very comfortable lifestyle, but the relentless pressure to maintain their high standard of living was clearly taking a heavy toll on her mental health. She slowly began to deeply resent what she perceived as Zoe's much more laid-back approach to her own work. Ultimately, neither woman actually wanted to admit out loud that the magical honeymoon phase of their relationship had officially ended. They both stubbornly clung to the comforting idea of their completely perfect marriage. It was exactly against this heavy backdrop of unspoken, lingering tension that they ultimately made a highly fateful decision, a choice that would unfortunately set into motion a dark chain of events neither of them could have foreseen. In a desperate attempt to inject at least some small amount of excitement into their strained relationship, they finally decided to hire someone to professionally maintain their severely neglected swimming pool. Little did they know that this seemingly innocent choice would profoundly change both of their lives forever. As the spring weather slowly turned into summer during 2023, Olivia and Zoe's once pristine backyard oasis had unfortunately fallen into a severe state of disrepair. Neither woman possessed the free time or the personal inclination to tackle the difficult maintenance work themselves. It was ultimately Zoe who verbally suggested hiring some outside help, logically reasoning that having a well-maintained pool would actively motivate them to spend more quality time outdoors together. Olivia quickly agreed with this idea. They quickly placed a help wanted ad on a popular local job board. Among the small handful of responses was an application submitted by a 19-year-old man named Liam Russo, a recent high school graduate. Liam was currently taking a gap year specifically to save up enough money to eventually attend college. When Liam finally arrived at their home for his formal interview, both women were immediately struck by his undeniable youthful good looks. Sporting sun-kissed skin, casually tousled hair, and incredibly piercing eyes, he genuinely looked like he could have stepped right off the glossy pages of a fashion magazine. Zoe, who was normally the much more reserved individual, suddenly felt a highly unexpected flutter deep in her stomach the moment Liam flashed a charming, dimpled smile in her direction. Despite his incredibly young age, Liam truly impressed both of them with his deep knowledge and his remarkable professionalism. His youthful enthusiasm was incredibly infectious, and by the time the interview concluded, both women were thoroughly charmed by him. They eagerly offered Liam the job right there on the spot, officially agreeing to a strict twice-weekly maintenance schedule for the backyard. As he left the property, Olivia and Zoe quietly exchanged a deeply loaded look of unspoken mutual understanding. There was a sudden, palpable energy in the room, a bright spark of something exciting that they simply had not felt in several years. Over the course of the next few weeks, Liam quickly became a permanent fixture in their backyard space. He enthusiastically attacked the massive pool cleanup project, successfully transforming the murky, green water back into a sparkling crystal blue haven. Olivia frequently found herself intentionally lingering over her hot morning coffee, quietly watching from the safety of the kitchen window as Liam diligently skimmed fallen leaves. Zoe, meanwhile, actively began timing her daily work breaks to perfectly coincide with Liam's scheduled visits. She would purposely bring him ice-cold drinks, eagerly engaging him in lengthy conversations about his personal interests and his future career aspirations. The ultimate catalyst for disaster finally arrived on a highly sweltering afternoon in August. Olivia had purposely taken a very rare full day off from her demanding work schedule, sincerely hoping to completely surprise Zoe with a beautiful, romantic lunch date. Instead, she arrived back at the house only to discover her wife and Liam engaging in what very clearly appeared to be a highly intimate, charged moment right out by the edge of the pool. Even though nothing overtly sexual was technically happening, the humid air between them loudly crackled with heavy, unspoken desire. Later that night, Olivia directly confronted Zoe regarding the incredibly obvious mutual attraction. What immediately followed was a completely brutal, entirely honest conversation regarding the actual state of their failing marriage and their unfulfilled emotional and physical needs. Shockingly, it was actually Olivia who first tentatively floated the radical idea. She nervously asked out loud what might happen if they simply invited Liam to actually join them together in the bedroom. The heavy suggestion hung thickly in the air between them, feeling simultaneously deeply thrilling and absolutely terrifying. They spent several long hours intensely discussing their personal boundaries and a multitude of potential emotional risks. By the time the early morning dawn finally broke, they had successfully reached a very tentative, careful agreement to officially explore this wild possibility together. Approaching Liam with the idea actually proved to be significantly easier than either woman had initially anticipated. The young man, deeply flattered and highly excited by the unexpected proposition, eagerly agreed to all their clearly stated terms and boundaries. What originally began as a simple, one-time sexual experiment very quickly evolved into a highly regular, scheduled arrangement between the three of them. Liam would diligently finish all his assigned pool maintenance duties in the backyard, and then he would happily join the two women inside the house for significantly more intimate activities. At the very beginning, having this threesome genuinely seemed to breathe an entirely new, vibrant life directly into Olivia and Zoe's struggling marriage. They successfully rediscovered a deep passion and a fun playfulness that had been completely absent from their private sex life for a very long time. They eventually settled into a comfortable routine. Tuesdays and Fridays officially became their strictly designated date nights with Liam. The two women would spend the evening preparing a highly lavish dinner together, sharing expensive wine and deep conversation with him before retiring to the master bedroom. Liam would always quietly slip out of the house in the early morning hours, leaving Olivia and Zoe completely alone to happily reconnect. For a few truly blissful weeks, it genuinely seemed as though they had found the absolute perfect solution to cure their marital doldrums. However, quietly bubbling just beneath the calm surface, very subtle but dangerous shifts were already beginning to occur. Zoe secretly began sending text messages to Liam constantly throughout the day, sharing private inside jokes when Olivia was not looking. Meanwhile, Olivia frequently found herself intentionally going completely out of her way to casually bump into Liam while running errands around town. Neither woman wanted to admit that their highly negotiated arrangement was rapidly veering entirely off course. They both desperately convinced themselves that engaging in a little bit of harmless extra flirtation was completely natural. But as the warm summer season waned and the cool autumn weather approached, the delicate balance they had managed to strike began to teeter. Entirely unbeknownst to one another, both Olivia and Zoe were genuinely falling deeply in love with Liam. What had initially started out as a fun, shared sexual adventure was rapidly transforming into a highly toxic, bitter competition. The very first visible cracks appeared in late September, when Zoe secretly planned a very special, highly personalized birthday surprise for Liam, purchasing a beautifully restored vintage record player. When Zoe presented this massive gift to him, Olivia was visibly deeply taken aback. The expensive gift seemed far too incredibly personal for what was strictly supposed to be a casual sexual relationship. Later that exact same night, for the very first time since they had begun their unconventional arrangement, Olivia completely begged off from joining the two of them in the master bedroom, falsely claiming a terrible headache. This specific incident officially marked a massive turning point. Olivia immediately began to heavily scrutinize absolutely every single interaction that took place between Zoe and Liam, desperately searching for hidden signs of a deeper secret connection. Intense, heavy paranoia quickly set in, utterly convincing Olivia that the two of them were actively carrying on a separate, secret affair entirely behind her back. Zoe remained entirely oblivious to her wife's rapidly growing anxiety and deep unease. She was far too caught up in the incredibly intoxicating excitement of experiencing new love. The extremely volatile situation finally came to a massive head on a deeply rainy Tuesday evening in early October. Olivia happened to arrive back home quite early to unexpectedly find Zoe and Liam completely curled up tightly together on the living room couch, quietly watching a movie in the dark. The sheer domestic intimacy of the quiet scene instantly sent Olivia flying into an absolute, blinding rage. She completely exploded in the middle of the room, loudly hurling vicious accusations of deep betrayal and disgusting deceit. In the direct aftermath of this massive emotional blow-up, a highly uneasy, deeply uncomfortable truce finally settled over the tense household. Olivia and Zoe constantly tiptoed extremely carefully around one another, their communication devolving into extremely curt exchanges regarding mundane household chores. Liam unfortunately became the completely unwitting pawn, trapped directly in the middle of their bitter power struggle. Olivia desperately showered the young man with highly expensive gifts, frequently buying him fancy designer clothes and the latest iPhone in a frantic attempt to financially secure his romantic loyalty. Zoe strongly appealed directly to his deep emotions, constantly confiding in him heavily regarding her troubled marriage. As the awful tension inside the house continually ratcheted up to an unbearable level, Liam definitely found himself becoming increasingly drawn towards Zoe's much gentler, kinder nature. The morning of November 12th, 2023, dawned incredibly gray and deeply blustery. Olivia woke up extremely early that day, her anxious mind rapidly racing with a highly specific plan. She was absolutely determined to end the disastrous affair with Liam once and for all. She spent the entire morning meticulously cleaning the house, carefully arranging large bouquets of flowers, and preparing an incredibly elaborate dinner. Zoe finally arrived back home in the late afternoon, looking incredibly surprised to find Olivia waiting. Zoe slowly agreed to talk, but strictly insisted on entirely postponing their heavy discussion until after dinner, secretly texting Liam to warn him not to come over. As Zoe went upstairs to shower, Olivia nervously uncorked a massive bottle of highly expensive red wine, rapidly working on her second large glass by the time Zoe returned. They sat down together at the dining table to eat, the incredibly thick silence broken only by the sharp clink of silver cutlery. Olivia desperately tried multiple times to successfully steer the conversation towards genuine reconciliation, but Zoe remained guarded. As the strong red wine continued to flow, Olivia's forced composure finally began to thoroughly crack and shatter. Her soft pleas for forgiveness rapidly turned back into highly bitter accusations. Right exactly as the terrifying argument was rapidly reaching an absolute fever pitch, the front doorbell suddenly rang loudly through the house. Olivia immediately froze in place, while all the natural color instantly drained completely out of Zoe's terrified face. They absolutely both knew exactly who was standing on the porch before Olivia angrily yanked the heavy front door wide open to reveal Liam, who was standing there looking incredibly confused. What happened next was a complete, chaotic blur of extremely loud shouting and highly vicious recriminations. Olivia violently lashed out verbally at both Zoe and Liam, screaming that they were intentionally making a massive fool out of her. In the absolute height of her blinding anger, Olivia suddenly grabbed a very heavy crystal vase right off the nearby wooden sideboard and viciously hurled it as hard as she could directly at the living room wall, narrowly missing Liam's head. Taking full advantage of the momentary silence, Zoe immediately urged Liam to quickly leave the house. But exactly as Liam turned his body to run away, Olivia violently moved and successfully blocked his only exit path. Speaking in a voice that was incredibly calm and quiet, Olivia looked right at him and threatened to formally report him to police for statutory rape, specifically aiming to completely ruin absolutely any chances he ever had of actually attending college. Zoe, clearly seeing completely wild, unhinged look shining in her angry wife's eyes, became deeply afraid for Liam's physical safety. She quickly reached out and firmly grabbed Olivia's arm, desperately tried to physically pull her angry wife completely away from the front door. Olivia reacted instinctively, violently and aggressively shoving Zoe backward as hard as she possibly could. Zoe completely lost her physical footing and suddenly stumbled heavily backward, her unprotected head violently connecting directly with the incredibly sharp, hard corner of the massive marble kitchen island with a deeply sickening crack. For a single awful moment, time actually seemed to stand completely entirely still inside the room. Then, Zoe's body completely crumpled and fell heavily down onto the hard floor, a massive, dark pool of blood very quickly spreading beneath her head. Liam immediately cried out loudly in absolute, sheer horror, instantly dropping right down his knees beside her unmoving body. Olivia simply stood there completely frozen in place, absolutely unable to mentally comprehend exactly what had just tragically happened. It was ultimately Liam who desperately managed to call emergency services, his terrified voice visibly shaking. When the local police finally arrived on the scene mere minutes later, they quickly found Olivia quietly sitting right by the very edge of the swimming pool, staring completely blankly downward. Zoe Blackwell was officially pronounced completely dead right there at the scene. Police Detective Alana Ramirez officially arrived directly at the property just slightly after midnight. The interior of the massive house was currently an absolute whirlwind of intense, highly coordinated police activity. Right inside the beautiful kitchen, perfectly outlined in stark white chalk on the floor, was the exact spot where Zoe Blackwell had unfortunately drawn her last breath. Detective Ramirez's very first crucial order of official business was properly interviewing young Liam Russo, who currently sat completely huddled right in the very back of a waiting ambulance. His spoken statement was incredibly fragmented, but it successfully managed to paint a very clear, highly disturbing picture of a toxic relationship gone wrong. Next, Detective Ramirez turned her undivided attention directly toward Olivia Hartley, who currently sat securely handcuffed in the back of a locked police car. It was absolutely entirely clear to the detective that Olivia was currently in absolutely no mental state whatsoever to handle a proper, formal police interview. As the long, dark night slowly wore on into the morning, a much clearer picture finally began to fully emerge. Neighbors officially reported clearly hearing loud, aggressive shouting coming from the house significantly earlier. The actual physical evidence completely told its very own highly damning story, including Olivia's highly distinct fingerprints perfectly placed directly on the exact edge of the marble kitchen island, exactly where Zoe had tragically struck her head. By the time the early dawn light finally arrived, Detective Ramirez confidently possessed more than enough hard evidence to file the preliminary criminal charges. Olivia Hartley would absolutely be formally booked and officially charged with a severe crime of second-degree murder. In the long, difficult days immediately following Zoe's truly tragic death, the dedicated police team worked completely tirelessly to successfully piece together the exact sequence of events. Recovered text messages clearly revealed the shocking fact that both Olivia and Zoe had actively been carrying on completely separate, highly intense emotional affairs directly with Liam. Financial records clearly showed incredibly large cash withdrawals taken directly from Olivia's personal bank account to purchase expensive luxury gifts for the young man. Zoe, it actually turned out, had actively been quietly planning to completely leave Olivia for good, having recently opened a secret bank account entirely in her own name. The criminal case suddenly took an incredibly highly unexpected turn when a deep forensic analysis conducted on Zoe's personal computer officially revealed a highly secret draft email originally intended to be sent directly to a local divorce attorney. Right inside this draft document, Zoe explicitly and clearly expressed intense, genuine fear for her own personal physical safety, specifically citing Olivia's highly increasingly erratic, terrifying behavior and her numerous verbal threats. This incredible discovery officially raised a terrible possibility that Olivia's violent actions taken on the actual night of Zoe's tragic death were actually completely premeditated. The highly anticipated criminal trial of Olivia Hartley officially began on an incredibly crisp spring morning nearly 6 full months after Zoe's tragic death. Inside the packed courtroom, the state prosecution team, officially led by the incredibly formidable District Attorney Elena Vasquez, successfully painted an incredibly damning picture portraying Olivia exactly as a deeply manipulative, highly jealous, controlling woman who had violently lashed out in a massive drunken rage. Liam Russo, officially testifying directly under a strict grant of full legal immunity, absolutely proved to be a highly compelling witness, tearfully recounting Olivia's scary violent threats made on the exact night of Zoe's tragic death. The heavily sequestered jury actively deliberated on the complex case for 4 incredibly long, highly tense days before finally successfully reaching a firm legal verdict. Olivia Hartley was formally and officially found entirely guilty of the severe charge of second-degree murder. At the official sentencing hearing held exactly 2 full weeks later, Olivia was formally given a massive sentence of 25 incredibly long years to life locked securely inside state prison. Young Liam Russo, even though he was absolutely not formally charged criminally with anything regarding Zoe's awful death, completely left the Oakwood Estates neighborhood forever to start an entirely brand new life, permanently carrying the massive dark weight regarding his own incredibly toxic role in the massive tragedy